in that region.
Which
So-
they sustain by horrible bloodbaths.
Exactly.
And executions and death squads. Still to this day they're doing that. Yeah.
And so the financial crisis in the United States and what has happened with the bubble bursting is now being discussed all over the world. That what they've imposed on us is blown up. The German government minister said, well, this is what they were pressuring us to do. Thank God we didn't. I mean, the Germans didn't go all the way. The British did, and there too now lots of trade unions are rising. Well, what's happened here because of that? Agha Saeed, to answer your question, the powers of trade unions were virtually disappeared. The American working class, with the deindustrialization, did not remain a force which it could have been. So on the social level, the people who could have taken up the issues of this crisis are not there. That's been one result of it. But that doesn't mean that these issues shouldn't be and wouldn't be taken up by other people. Hence, this opposition to the bailout coming from populist Republicans is coming because they know their base. And they're saying, why the hell should we bail these crooks out? That's what you're doing. You're using our money to bail out these guys and the corporations. And this is why a more social democratic plan on the model of the New Deal would go down much better. That's what the Democrats should be arguing for. We're going to give you a New Deal here and in the world.
Well, Michael, do you think that will be an issue in the next election? I doubt it.
I doubt it.
Next election meaning 2008 or 2012?
I mean, in November of this year.
Yeah.
You know, this social democratic, which Tariq mentions, it's a very intriguing term. In 1978, I have it in one of my books too, there were a number of financial leaders who said, we've got to do something about Jimmy Carter. We've got to do something. This country is moving toward a social democracy.
Exactly.
And we, or even worse, we can't do that. and from 78 to today, they have been whacking it down. Now, in a New Yorker magazine, just a couple of issues back, of course, I can't remember the exact citation and all. I'm not that good anymore. But anyway, they quoted, there was an article on the fact that the conservatives in the Republican Party are running out of issues. Like they don't quite, well, there's still Social Security, but that's about, and one or two other things, and gay marriage and that stuff, which some people are getting bored with. But one of these people said, one of the reasons we're running out of issues is because we've won. We prevented America from becoming a social democracy. He used the same term. They know what they're doing. You know, they really had an agenda, and the Democrats don't seem to have a clue about this sort of thing.
It began, I think, the whole of the 70s with the winding down of the Vietnam War. There was a huge debate among the upper class, the ruling class of America. We come out, as a youth, I said Marxism doesn't work very well in applying to America. It's worked very well since the Reagan Revolution of 1980.
It's class war.
But
It is class
absolutely class war, starting with the crushing of the PATCO strike of the air controllers.
Yeah.
But all of that was being hatched through the 1970s. The first recognition with this essential failure in Vietnam that America was going to have to rethink its role in the world, and there was a debate between what my friend Michael Clare called the Prussians and the traders, the people who said America has traditionally been an economically dominant power and should continue to do that, versus the people who said, no, we need to have military superiority in order to maintain our role in the world. And the military people were probably a minority in the ruling class, but they had much more money from these big corporations like Hewlett-Packard, whose future really depended on the big defense budget.
But let's project it a little further, maybe 20 years from today. There are now a number of scholarly works by Kennedy, by Neil Ferguson at Harvard and others, and there are CIA studies by National Intelligence Council mapping the global future, which says in 20 years the world is going to go from unipolar to multipolar.
Yeah.
Chinese economy will expand beyond American economy.
Of course.
And there will be many powers of center that will compete with the United States. Given that's going to happen maybe in 20 years, combining with the fact that the people in this country, the demographic composition of this country is also changing. Latino population is going to be a very large component.
Asian too.
And also that the two generations of retired people mostly will be European Americans, and most of the people who are working will be people of color. So given the dynamics of change internally and externally, how do we see this empire playing out next 20 years? What's the scenario for it in the next 2 decades, which is not a very long time in the life of nations?
Next 20 years. That's crystal ball. I'll leave it for you.
Could I just say, first of all, there are two alternative scenarios. One is with a major war, and the other is without. Now, of course, we would hope for the second alternative, and which would mean a rapid return to multilateralism, a change of policy in Washington in this respect. And I think the Democrats are capable of that. I don't think the Democrats are really wedded to the notion of unilateral dominance to the same extent as the Republicans, and even really a faction of the Republicans, the Neocon faction. But absent some kind of rapid return to respect for international law, international treaties, everything that George W. Bush tore up when he first came in 2001. If we don't get that kind of initiative from America, then I think, first of all, the risks of war in the world are very big, and the risks of that expanding into, say, if America continues to act as it does now and drives Russia and China together, which is not really the situation at present, as we saw in Georgia, then it's up to America really to take the first steps to avoid that kind of risk for war.
Peter, it is true that Bush after 9/11 and the Neocons, totally backed by the Likud party in Israel and AIPAC, decided to go for break, fight Iraq, occupy Afghanistan, all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I think it's worth noting that there is a continuity between the previous administration.
I agree.
Clinton totally ignored the United Nations when he used NATO to bomb Yugoslavia. It was under the Clinton-Albright administration that sanctions against Iraq, which wrecked many, many things in that country and killed, 500,000 kids, took place without causing any big flurry in the world, in the Western world at large. But so I think there are some problems here about whether the Democrats will be able to pull out.
That's the theme of my book. You go back further to the previous Democratic president, Carter. Carter was actually elected on a campaign promise to cut the defense budget. And under his presidency, thanks to the Rockefeller-inspired leadership of Zbigniew Brzezinski in the National Security Council, he presided over what we think of as the Reagan budget increases, but were actually drafted and planned under Carter. There has been this continuous...
In the last 2 years of his term, that's when he made the switch. He got the word that not this way, it's this way you go. Right. And that's when he started cutting back on human services and started increasing military spending.
But there has been this trend, continuous. That's why I call my book The War Conspiracy.
He set up Reagan before Reagan took over.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that remains a central problem in American politics. Now, what will happen over the next 25 years? One thing is just beyond dispute, that China today is the workshop of the world. That's what Western policies have created. Virtually everything you see is made in China. And from that point of view, it's a situation which is analogous to the role played by Britain in the 19th century after the Industrial Revolution. So what impact is this going to have on the world at large? Is the Chinese economy not totally dominated by the free market, as we know full well, but with state intervention as well, is going to move on and on? What impact will it have? Let me tell you that when the United States announced that it wanted bases in perpetuity in Afghanistan, and the NATO Secretary General Joop Scheffer told the Brookings Institution that the reason we are in Afghanistan is it's not nation building or good governance, and not even really Al-Qaeda. It's because Afghanistan is a strategically important country on the borders with China, Iran, and Central Asia.